Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the new season, once again, of Lessons from Terrible Students. As always, we are the Terrible Students. My name is Jeremy. That's Sarah. Sarah, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
So we are back with a brand new season. I'm starting to lose count. I think we're on season 5 of our podcast here with Lumius. So this season, we're changing it up once again. So we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to be a little bit more concise. The episodes are going to be a little bit more compact, and we're going to be keeping this season mainly around what we're going to be calling L&D case studies. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be bringing on IDs, project managers, stakeholders, essentially anybody that has a interesting case study that they want to talk about. And we're going to talk through what the problem was, or not problem, just what happened, what the solution was, what the results were, what everybody thought about it, and kind of how that particular situation was worked through. So to begin with, we're going to start with, as always, our marketing plug. So this podcast is brought to you by Lumius. At Lumius, we are your partner in learning. So we are going to start with one of my case studies. So this is something that I have done on a project. So we had a project, and the client or stakeholder came to us and said that they wanted to do specifically empathy and sympathy training.
Like empathy versus sympathy, or just the both of them?
Both of them. They honestly didn't really know the difference in those terms. So that's kind of something we had to boil down to figure out what they were talking about. But essentially, here's what the problem was. So the client came to us, and it was customer-facing employees. They really wanted to establish a better relationship within the first 2 minutes of the customer walking in their store. So they had a representative that would greet them. Within the first 10 seconds of walking in the store, there was a representative there to greet them. That first interaction, that is what they were having trouble with, according to their customer exit surveys. So they were taking exit surveys from their customers.
Right.
And the main pain point of their customer was that first interaction with that first person, like within the first minute of getting in there. And it just started that customer off on the wrong foot, right?
Understandable.
So after we were lucky enough to where they had already kind of done a little bit of their own analysis and digging in and trying to figure out, why is that bad? And what they had figured out was their employees didn't really understand why their behavior was causing a negative impression. So what they wanted to do was figure out some way for their employee to realize what impact their behavior was having on their customer.
Okay.
So they had the leader of this team that brought this case to us had seen and read a lot of articles about using 360 video and virtual reality and how it does really, really well with this type of training, like putting your employees or your trainees or your learners into somebody else's shoes. So they were hooked and really, really focused on that bit of technology. Here's the problem. Here's the hook, right? This was before this technology became cheaper. It's not really cheap today, but this was before it's as cheap as it is today. So when I was doing this project, you essentially had two options. You had your virtual reality headset that hooked to a very high-powered computer.
Okay.
And you had one where you slid a smartphone into it. And I'm not going to say either one of those brands because we're not sponsored by those brands. However, if either one of those brands wants to sponsor us, reach out, let us know. We can work something out. However,
And then we're happy to mention you.
that's right. That's exactly right. So we essentially had to then figure out which one of these routes they had the budget for,
Fair.
and B was feasible. And this was pre-COVID, so the using the same headset, sanitary wise, was a minor concern. Where
Pretty common.
I believe that would be more of a concern now because we weren't really as. I feel like it should have been taken more seriously than it was.
We spent a lot of years being not very mindful about germs and washing our hands.
Yes, yes. It was brought up, but it was quickly kind of downgraded as a concern on the stakeholders' end. Like, we'll be fine. I'm not worried about that. So and it wasn't brought up after that. But I felt like I had to include that because there was sharing of headsets within this group, and I don't think that's something that would happen now. But anyway, so the execution and what the plan ended up being was we would take a small pilot group and we would film a 360 video, which that in and of itself took a special camera and special equipment and things like that. And we'll get to that in a second. And then we would have them use, they already had phones that were provided to them by their employer.
Yep.
That we just had to have the IT department sideload the software for this VR software on their phone. So they could sideload the software and the training videos themselves. So we could do all of that for them. And the supervisor that was going to be running this training with them, essentially we would give them a facilitator guide, a huddle guide. The supervisor would play the video, and then the supervisor would have guided questions after they watched the video. So essentially you would watch this video, and then there would be a debrief after they watched the video, kind of along the lines of, okay, how did that make you feel? What did you notice?
Right.
Anything jump out at you? That type of thing. Obviously more specific to what was in the video, but, just kind of the debrief questions to kind of get a conversation started on an individual level. So in this small pilot group, that's how we were going to start. And then if it got a good reception and they got the budget to go larger, we could expand from there. But we wanted to get kind of this base down first, right? So did a lot of research, found the 360 camera we needed, already had the microphone, obviously, because we had done video recordings before and things like that. Found a location to shoot because we had to find a good store location to shoot in. This is one of the times that I actually traveled to a recording set. So we went on a Sunday because this was the only time that particular location was closed, was on Sundays. Mm-hmm. Found some really, really fantastic people that worked at this location. They were great. They were willing to come in and work with us on Sunday and populate the store. And then we found some additional people to come in and play our customers. Okay. So, we found all of this, got it all set up. We thought we were doing great, right? I think you can see where this is going. So we get there, and so this store is actually in New York City.
Oh,
yeah, it was actually pretty nice. It was a nice store on the inside, except here's the kicker. So I am 6'1". I am 6 foot 1 inches tall. The way that you film a POV video is that you have to wear this like head strap with this camera on top of your head, right? It straps the camera to your head. And my assumption this whole time is like, I'm going to wear this video and they're just going to feel tall, right? Because they would be 6'2", because it would be another like inch higher than me because this camera stands up like this, right?
Right.
So we get to this location in New York City, and the ceiling is only 7 foot tall. So
Not a lot of space left between the top of your head and the
we
camera.
filmed one interaction. We were going to film a total of 5 interactions. We filmed one interaction, and I go back and look at it. You feel like Shaquille O'Neal watching this video. Like, you feel like a giant walking in the store.
That is too funny.
Scraping the. I'm like, this is not going to work. So again, we got super lucky and found one of the people that had come in to play our customers for us.
Okay.
Barely 5 foot tall. I'm talking about, she was probably like 4'11", and she was fantastic. So she agreed to it because this headset was not comfortable. That's why I was going to do it. It's not comfortable. It like comes down over.
You were going to take one for the team.
Yeah, it clamps on your head, and she was super happy to do it, and it ended up, working really, really well. We got a good point of view doing it that way. But so that was the first big hurdle we had to get over was, the store they chose. We didn't see anything about it until we got on site, and at that point, it's too late. We're there,
right?
We're in it. Like, this is what we're doing, and we're going to record this thing. We're going to get it done.
Make it work.
So that was not the only technical snafu we had that day, but that was probably the biggest one. What ended up coming of it is we ended up making some really, really great. Each video was probably only 30 seconds long, but we made 3 versions of each of these interactions. So we made a good interaction where the customer would come in, they have a good interaction right off the bat, and then they're sent to where they're sent to. Because that's the only interaction that we're focusing on, right? Is that first, hey, how are you doing?
Right.
That's
the greeting.
But we did a good one where that employee does everything they're supposed to do. And then we did one where it's just slightly off.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did one where it's just terrible. And it's so funny. The one that's slightly off, I think everybody has had an experience like that where you walk in and they're just like, what do you want? Or you walk in and they're just like, yes.
Yes. I hate
and
that.
It hits the spot in the back of your brain where you're like,
yeah,
that's how we're going to play this right now?
Yep. Been there, done that.
Yeah. But then there was the really bad ones where they actually didn't even end up using them because they were just so bad. Because we let the employees kind of ad-lib what they thought a bad situation would be, because our stakeholders had not given us what they thought a really bad interaction would be. They said, we'll send you some employees as your SMEs, let them kind of do it the way that they have seen it done. So we're like, okay. It was hilarious.
I was going to say, in all fairness, that is really comes down to interpretation. And if you want a bad example of what a horrible greeting could look like, I'm sure there was no shortage of ideas there. But were they realistic? Like, is anybody that terrible to people coming in?
There were a couple where we had to stop. Like, come on, man, you can't cuss him out when he walks in the door. Like, I can't, in good conscience, put curse words in my training. Let's start it from the top. Let's start over. Next. But at the end of the day, what we were able to do was get some really, really great 360 video so that when the employees put on this headset, they were in the shoes of their customer walking into the store and immediately hit with either a good or bad interaction. And then they were asked immediately after that, okay, how did that make you feel, when you had this bad interaction? And can you think about how you make customers feel when you interact that way with them? So we really drilled it home with some of those debrief questions after the fact. And I think that's where a lot of the learning took place, where we hit them with that empathy up front, where it's like, man, I did not like how that made me feel. But then the debrief
Yeah.
questions were also important, where we're like, okay, well, remember when you're in that role, you are possibly making people feel like that. So, when you, because the big part of it is when you come to work, no matter what you have going on, you have to leave that at the door because you are a customer facing position. That was one of their big, key business objectives and learning objectives was you have to be able to treat the customer well no matter what you have going on. So that was one of the things that they wanted to pull out with those debrief questions, which is
I mean,
rough. It's one of the hardest things about a customer facing spot, I think.
I was going to say, as someone who worked in the service industry for many years, it's very difficult sometimes to put on that face, the customer service face, the voice, if you will.
Yeah, I would say that I think everybody needs to work a customer service job, customer facing job, at least some.
Agreed.
Um,
Absolutely agreed. But I kind of feel like we're living in different times from even what you're talking about, right? Like the fact that this company invested in this because they realized it was a problem or they needed a resolution. Um, I kind of feel like post COVID, we're at this spot where it's so hard to staff customer facing, roles that it's
yeah,
almost like you take what you can get. Like I've experienced some pretty crazy, like just a lot of times people don't even greet you now, like at the grocery store. I'm the first one to be like, "How you doing?" Sometimes they
yeah.
ignore me.
It's a different
Okay.
landscape for sure, and that's an interesting conversation around how customer service has changed post COVID. Um, and it would be interesting to me. And I'll say, long story short, the budget did not get approved for this training to go farther than that pilot location.
Ah,
They didn't want to pay for the headsets, and IT didn't want to have to push the software to the amount of phones that they would need to push
I see.
to make a larger scale program. Everything worked. The stakeholders were pleased with it. They loved the product. They campaigned hard for it as far as to launch it nationally within their company, but they just couldn't get the budget approved
Yeah.
that budget year. And then I think the next budget year came around and they just forgot about it. So I can't say what would have happened had this training program still been around. I doubt it would have survived COVID just because of the pitch was for each of those stores to have two headsets and just swapping the phones out.
Oh yeah, that alone. Just the like tactical piece
Yeah.
of how you would do that would have had to have changed.
I don't think that would have lasted past COVID because that's something you're putting on your face
Sure.
just from the, pure health aspect of it. I don't think it would have lasted past COVID anyway.
That makes me think about though, like if you've worked in contact centers ever, you know that one of the most common like parts of that training is the buddy system and sitting next to somebody while they take calls and listening on a headset. And I wonder what that looks like today if they still do that. Like,
That's a good question because there's no easy way to sanitize. Maybe UV light because they got those little UV light cleaners for phones, right? Maybe that's how they do it. But that's a good question. I
perhaps.
don't know. That's a great question. That may be something I go and try to figure out because that's something that I think I've done a side by side sit early in my career just to figure out how customer service works and what they have to deal with and that kind of thing. Helped me a lot because
Yep.
I have never had a customer service job. I was customer facing when I was a technician, but I've never done like phone support, sitting at a desk doing phone support. I would support customers over a cell phone,
Right.
but I was never like sitting in a call center running phones like that. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience when I did my day in the life that way.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I came from a long line of contact centers. Been to a lot of them in my day. And that was just part of the regular training, at the end. So you're doing the buddy system, sitting with a tenured agent, if you will, watching how they work their magic.
You got to think they're still doing that, though. They've got to still be doing it.
I'm sure.
Better way, at least as far as I know, there's no better way to learn it than to listen to how people that are doing the job do it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Everybody has cell phones now for the most part. Most people use earbuds. Like they probably have found a way to just dial in through your own phone using your own earbuds or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? But we'll find out. I'm sure we'll end up doing a training about it, and somebody will let us know. But
yeah.
But that's our first case study. So that's how we ended up getting around. We had to learn what hardware to use, and I didn't even get into because I didn't want to. I could have blown this into an hour episode just talking about what software we had to figure out how to use, because it was not native software, native video editing software that we had to use at that point. That software suite has now been integrated into the Adobe Premiere Pro suite, so you can. For anybody listening that wants to know, you can edit 360 video natively within Premiere now, because the suite that I used was bought by Adobe. So
there you go.
I didn't even get into that. I spent probably 2 weeks researching software, trying to figure out which, once I actually got these files off of this camera, how to actually edit them into something I could use, because the camera itself, the 360 camera, recorded great video, but had probably the worst microphone I've ever heard in my life. So we had to have a separate microphone that was recording audio, and I had to sync it to the video.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It was a whole thing. I learned a lot about
video
editing doing that project. So it was a whole thing. But so that is our first case study. There were a ton of ups and downs in that project, and I could probably go on and talk. But again, we're trying to keep these a little bit more succinct and a little bit more time saving. So what I will say is that here at Lumius, we love doing these kind of projects where we have to figure these things out and we have to dig in and figure out what the actual need is. We love helping our customers figure that out and doing new things like this. If you or somebody you know has a learning need like this, please let us know. Go to Lumius.com, click on Custom L&D Services up the top. We will be more than happy to help you figure this stuff out, and hopefully we hear from you in the future. But for as of right now, we're going to leave it at that. Sarah, I appreciate you coming along with me on this. We will have another one, and more than likely we will have a whole lot more of these, and more than likely there will be a whole lot more of these where I make a fool out of myself, because this is one that actually came out pretty positively, but there have been a whole lot more where I ended up screwing something up.
It is how you learn. It is absolutely how you learn. And I just want to add that, we have done several projects at Lumius that require, going out to different locations with filming crews and, documenting processes. And there's really no limit to what we could do for you as a learning and development company to build your training. So check us out.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time. I appreciate it.
Have a great one. Bye.